Now for the track guide, there are some mistakes in this lap and I will point them out once we go to them. But for turn 1, this is the first reference. This road on the left side, this is the turning point. We turn in with the throttle still pinned to 100%. And then what we want to do is to rotate the car with the brakes and not with the steering wheel. So at the curb, I'm applying the brakes and I'm trailing the brakes a lot. The goal is to rotate it with the brakes, so don't overheat the front tires. So still holding, touching this curb on the left side, and then apexing and connecting the brakes with the throttle. So you shouldn't have a gap in between throttle and brake at this point. Using this curb on the left side, so you know that you carry just enough speed. And now the S's is just about the flow. Depending on your setup, you can take this corner flat out. This was one of my mistakes. I could have cut a bit more and hold the throttle a bit in the 90%, but I dropped it to 75 or so. So take a note of that. You can almost go flat out here. Now for the next one, I like to give it 5-10% brakes at this curb and then go back on throttle just to make the front tires point a bit more. Because this corner here, we don't need to over prepare it, and that's one of the biggest tips for this track. In the S's, you can get away with your car being in the center or more to the left than being to the right side, because you'll have just enough time to take it and still had a good exit. And it's all about the flow. At this point we would just want to stay very close to the white line and to the curb, because the goal is to take this corner flat out. So this should be something you should strive for. Now, keeping very close to the white line so we travel the less distance possible. And coming up to the next section, braking point is the 50-meter board. I use more the brakes for turning the car, not for slowing it down. So still in 5th gear, very early on throttle. At the curb you should already back on throttle because it will help balance the car better, and be mindful to not go wide on this green here. Your car will bottom out and you won't be able to turn. Don't put your whole car on this curb. Having the antenna on the beginning of red is what you should aim for. Now this corner is very important. You should be early on this corner, which means you need to rotate the car a lot before the corner. In my case, I trail brake a lot. So I started braking at the middle of the curb and then trailing, still trailing at the apex, connecting the throttle. And if you look at the shape, it's the last 10-20% of the brake shape. It's just about the rotation, just to make the car point. The hairpin is where I do one of my mistakes. Braking point is past this curb on the left side. So after you straighten up the car, I usually apply the brakes. And here I had a moment of losing grip while turning in. So the goal is to apex at the white line. You don't need to touch the red and white, just the white line, and connect better the throttle and the brake. So if you notice on the shape, there is a gap in between the brake and the throttle. The goal is to have them with a completely seamless transition. So this was the mistake, but it was under braking for me. I lose grip under braking and it was harder to get back on throttle at this point, so I had no choice than coasting. Using the curb on the outside to carry more speed. And now the next corner is really important because it teaches you to play more with the car balance, and it's all about trail brake and connecting trail brake with throttle. And this showcase this principle in the best way. So for me, the braking point is this concrete on the right side. I brake and downshift to 5th, and I am thinking about this corner in terms of checkpoints. So the first checkpoint is this curb. I want to apex at the white line, still holding the brakes. Now I'm connecting the brakes with the throttle with no gap. And the next checkpoint is to arrive at the curb on the right side and touch it with the right wheel. Just a tiny touch. So after I touch it, I'm off the throttle and back on brakes to rotate the car. So trailing, 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 still trailing, still trailing, still trailing until the apex, and then back on throttle. And this shape here, so off throttle, brake, on throttle, brake, back on throttle with no gaps, is what is gonna gain you a lot of time in this corner, because this is how you're gonna rotate the car and maintain a good car balance while using all the track. Finally, onto the last corner. Braking point is past the 100, so it's in between this banner and the 100-meter board. And this is where I do my other mistake. So you brake in a straight line, you turn in, but you want to cut a lot more than this. And my mistake was that I dropped the brakes too quickly. So at this point I should still be trailing more, so the car would rotate more. You need to cut a lot more on this curb to open up the next one. So this gap here shows that I could have gained at least 1/10.5 in this part, just by cutting more and holding more the brakes. This corner, this is how you need to cut it, but I had to overslow to do it. And the goal is to put your car like almost half the car on this curve, on the exit, because it will make the car point better and you can be more confident on throttle. And in short, that's a track guide for Suzuka. I hope you have a great week ahead, and I'll see you on the next one.